Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beach. Today, in a rare press conference, in fact, after many months, India Alliance leaders came together on one issue, and that was to protect freedom of expression. And another thing which they spoke about was the data protection law. And what did they actually ask for as far as the data protection law is concerned? And I'll just read that out to you because just a few days before, activists like Anjali Bharadwaj had met Rahul Gandhi also on this issue. And what they've asked for is to repeal Section 44.3 of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, which amends the Right to Information Act 2005. Now, this amendment basically poses a serious risk of undermining people's ability to access critical information under the RTI Act. Now, is this coming too late? Because this was an issue which was brewing up for quite many months, and now India Alliance has woken up. So, is it too late? And what are the contentions as far as whatever issues have been raised today? Joining me now is transparency activist Anjali Bharadwaj, who's worked very hard for this Data Protection Act. She was one of the persons who met Rahul Gandhi recently. And Anjali, thank you so much for joining this evening. The very fact that India Alliance has done a press conference today on this issue, do you think that this is too late, coming too little and too late now? You have to unmute.
Well, Nilu, it's not really a question of too little, too late, because the matter here that is involved is of very, very great consequence to our democracy. So I think that it's very important that the opposition parties today, the India Alliance, have decided that they will come together. They have released a letter that has been signed by the leaders of all the political parties in the India Alliance, or almost all of them. More than 120 MPs have already signed, and they're saying more are signing. They're going to send the letter to Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw, who is the Meti minister who's in charge of the data protection law. And I think that it's a very significant move. I hope that the government will pay attention. Look, what has been happening is that the data protection law has been in the making for quite some time now. And there have been many concerns around the data protection regime. The very important thing that any data protection law should do is make sure that it protects citizens' privacy and also harmonizes with people's right to information. Now, our right to information is guaranteed under the Constitution, and we are able to exercise it under the Right to Information Act, which was passed in 2005. As you know, Neelu, a lot of people across the country, almost 60 lakh people every year file RTI requests. And they ask for information which exposes corruption, exposes human rights violations and wrongdoings, and holds the governments accountable. Now, how are they doing this? They do it when there is a violation of any kind of right, or if there is corruption, they seek granular information. Now, what this law has enabled people to do is hold governments accountable through accessing this kind of information. The data protection law, however, goes ahead and amends the Right to Information Act. It has destroyed the basic kind of right that it gave to people to hold governments accountable. I'll give you an example. We saw how in the various elections that have happened in the last few years, there have been many concerns that have been raised about the voter list, where people have been told that there are large number of additions, there are large number of deletions in the voter lists, which are arbitrary, they are wrong, and that can lead to electoral fraud. The best way to stop that electoral fraud is if people know the voter list, who is on the list, so they can make out whether there are wrong names that have been added or deleted from that list. Now, the Election Commission of India, after the passage of the data protection law, there'll be a big question mark. They will say that, this has personal information. We cannot put out this list in the public domain anymore. They'll say that it has names of voters, it has their addresses, it has their photographs. We can't give this information anymore in the public domain. They might take this down. Now, this will cause a huge problem. Similarly, there is a host of information that people actively use the RTI law to access. Like, for example, people want to know who are the big capitalists who are taking loans from public sector banks. They want to know their names, and then their loans are written off. Now, people will be told that in the name of data protection, the list, because it contains the names, it is personal information, will not be provided, because Section 81J of the Right to Information Act has been amended by the Data Protection Law. Section 81J now says that citizens cannot access any personal information from the government. So no personal information is available means no accountability. And that,
Right.
I think, is the thing that was really highlighted today by the opposition in the press conference. And I'm really glad that they have taken this step.
No, but Anjali, there's one question which is there on everyone's mind, and that is the fact that the India bloc leaders, and everyone is asking that India bloc leaders should have been more proactive while for resisting this act, considering the fact that the details and the original draft of this bill was widely known. And it was raised regularly by activists like you. In fact, I've spoken to you a number of times on this. But do you think that India Alliance has taken a long while to wake up to this issue? And this was such a contentious issue. They could have rallied around through a big movement on this. You had to ultimately meet Rahul Gandhi and then convince him on certain issues. Then finally, they've decided to hold a press conference today. So do you think they have woken up late?
So I think two things are happening, Neelu. First of all, the bill went through various iterations, and many of the people who were sitting on the press conference today said that they were part of the JPC, but the amendments that were made to the Right to Information Law and some of the other provisions which are very problematic were never discussed. And they were suddenly passed in 2023 in August by the Parliament. The second thing is that the Parliament passed the data protection law when the Manipur issue was being debated, and there was a no confidence motion, and almost the entire opposition had walked out. At that point, this bill was brought in without any substantive debate on the provisions of the law. The bill was passed and it became law. Now, of course, it is very disappointing that after August 2023 also, it has taken the opposition some amount of time to engage with this and to then realize how dangerous this is going to be for our democracy.
Why do you think that they took so much of time? I mean, this issue was not their priority, or they were engaged in some other issues. Maybe they were busy with elections. What was the reason? Why do you think, what was the reason for this delay?
I'm sure there must be a lot of reasons, Neelu, which they'll probably be able to tell us better. But my understanding is that after August 2023, there have been general elections, there have been other state elections, there have been other issues that have been coming up. Even this parliament session, the Waqf amendment took sort of a lot of energy, I'm sure also of the various parties in the opposition. But I do feel that it is an important recognition that if this law is now to be operationalized, because let us understand, Neelu, that this law was passed. It's a very technical law. It was passed in August 2023, but it has not been operationalized till date, which is also probably the reason why the opposition hasn't kind of taken cognizance of it in this time. Now that the government is saying they're bringing rules to operationalize this law will now become effective. That's when I think there has been a wide recognition in the political parties and also amongst journalists and citizens that, look, this is a very, very dangerous piece of law. Look, let's understand this, Tilu. What is this law doing? This law is basically centralizing control on data. It is giving control on data to the central government, and that is it's doing in a very arbitrary way, because what we are seeing is two types of things that are being done. One is that our right to information is being curtailed because there is an amendment to the right to information law. Now we are not going to be able to access information that we need to hold the government accountable. The other thing that the law is doing is that it is saying that anyone who collects or processes any amount of personal data will become a data fiduciary. Now, the data fiduciary cannot collect or process anyone's personal data without very explicit and very, very cumbersome consent process. And then, if anyone feels there is a violation of the law, they can
No, but
take a
I just need a
complaint.
little clarification. Anjali, if I could
Yes.
just clarify that this India bloc's petition, uh, uh, I think, doesn't seek the repeal of other problematic provisions about the data fiduciaries, the constitution, and the powers of the Data Protection Council, etc. It does this petition talk about this?
So what I understand, Neelu, that the petition that they have submitted or they have signed and they are going to submit is on Section 44.3, which deals with the Right to Information Act. But in the press conference, they did talk about the blow this will deal to journalistic freedom and free speech and expression. And what we heard from the leaders who were there was that they intend to pursue this further, and there will be other issues also about the law that they are planning to take up. So, for example, one of the members of parliament talked about how the fact that all journalists will now be termed data fiduciaries if they process personal data. That is going to be, there is no journalistic exemption in the law, Neelu, which basically means that unlike other countries where there are data protection laws, they give journalistic exemption. Here, there is no journalistic exemption. So someone like you, somebody else who's collecting personal data because they're doing fact finding, they're doing an investigative piece, they will be called a data fiduciary, and if there is any complaint against them, it will go to a data protection board, which is a completely sarkari board. It's a completely controlled board by the central government. The central government will appoint the board. They will remove the members and the chairperson. Their functioning will be controlled by the central government. This board will have the power to impose penalties up to 500 crore rupees on any violation. So can
No,
you
but say,
imagine
for example,
any journalist?
yeah. No, I was just about to ask you that, say, for example, a YouTuber or a journalist who's not associated with a very big newspaper or a very big organization, and he or she is honestly doing his job, fact finding, fact checking, and supposing if he or she comes across a data, so which means that is 500 crore rupees going to be slapped against a journalist? Is that what we are? What can happen to the journalists?
Potentially, that's what can happen to a journalist, because what is written in the law is that if the journalist collects personal data of any kind, it could be that they go for a fact finding, there have been some deaths, there has been a stampede, they take down some information which is personal in nature, name of the person, address, etc. If they don't take consent, or if there is a complaint that goes against them to the data protection board, the board can penalize them up to 500 crore rupees. So can you imagine, this is not just you're talking about a small media house, or you're talking about a single journalist. Imagine even a big media house. How will they do journalism? Which basically what this law will ensure is that only propaganda will be allowed. Only what the central government wants you to publish, only what the central government wants you to project is what will be allowed. The central government is also saying in this law, the central government is empowered to say who is not a data fiduciary. So can you imagine the implications of that? So if there is a media house who finds favor with the ruling party at the center, they might be exempt under the law. The law will not apply to them in that case. case. But anyone who raises inconvenient questions about the government at the center, it will apply to them. So this is completely arbitrary. Therefore, it does not even protect people's right to privacy. And that's why it's not just information activists, it's also privacy activists, it's also journalists, it's also other people who are concerned about corruption, about accountability, who are now against this. And I think the opposition parties have understood that this is something that is going to impact democracy as a whole. It is also going to impact political parties, Neelu. Let me explain to your viewers how it's going to do that. Today, we know that elections can't be fought unless people are reached out to. Outreach is very important for political parties. What do? They take down names of their supporters, they take down their phone numbers, they send them messages before elections and even between elections. Now, anybody who might want to complain against them, or the government itself can also complain under this law, can file a complaint to the Data Protection Board. Imagine if even 10 people file a complaint against any political party, opposition party, the Data Protection Board will impose a penalty of up to 5,000 crore rupees on the political party. Where are they going to, how are they going to function? And I think that political parties have realized that this is dangerous for political opposition also. Because again, like I said, that the central government will decide who's a fiduciary and who's not. So the ruling party IT cell will be exempt potentially, and the IT cells of all the opposition parties will be covered under the law, will have all these provisions. So, I mean, this will become an effective way of shutting down media houses, of shutting down political parties, of shutting down campaigns and NGOs that are raising inconvenient questions. And this is what an attack on freedom of speech and expression looks like. If
No, but
when we
Anjali, for now it has been petitioned, to the Minister of IT and Electronics. But if I don't think that the government is really in a mood to listen to whatever petitions are coming up. And if they were in a mood to come to listen, these kind of amendments wouldn't have been done. So how hopeful are you that the government is going to listen? Otherwise, what is the way out then?
So today, in the afternoon, the press conference by the India bloc happened, and also the minister, Mr. Vaishnaw, has put out a letter which he has addressed to Mr. Jairam Ramesh in response to the letter that was written to him by Mr. Jairam Ramesh. In that, unfortunately, he doesn't even talk about the amendments to the RTI law. He does not even refer to Section 44(3), which the parties are now saying should be repealed. So you're right. Unfortunately, what we seem to be seeing is that the government so far has not really been responsive. As civil society organizations, as transparency activists, as journalists, and as right to privacy activists, we have all written to the government repeatedly saying, don't bring a law like this. It is a huge blow to our democracy, to our free speech and expression. But despite that, this law was pushed through parliament without any debate or discussion at a time when the opposition was not in the house. And even after that, there has been no attempt made to really try and correct the situation. Look, in a democracy, Nilu, what are the choices that people have? Finally, this is something that has to be taken up by the political opposition. It has to be something that is taken up by civil society, by journalists outside parliament. And of course, if there is a requirement, a challenge will be brought to the Supreme Court or the
But
various courts of the
doesn't
country.
this process, Anjali, and this is my last question to you, that doesn't this process look long drawn now? Now, if the government doesn't listen, which of course it's in no mood to listen, it will make the rules, the law. And the law will be there, and the people will start suffering. You don't know how long the litigation will take place, when the courts will respond, as we have seen in the case of electoral bonds and several other cases, that the cases don't come up for hearing at all. So what happens then? I mean, are we going to see people paying penalties? We're going to see people in jails. What is the scenario going to look like?
So, Neelu, this is a very valid concern. Let me say that at the moment, the law is not operationalized. And one of the things we have been repeatedly saying to the government is don't operationalize the law in its current form. Please take it back. Please review it. Please repeal sections that are so anti democratic. Today, at least what we have seen is that opposition parties have come together and they are also saying that repeal the amendments that are made to the RTI Act. They also said today that there are other problematic provisions of the law which need to be reviewed. They are again also urging the government to not operationalize this law. So this law at the moment, like I said, is not operational. It's a draconian piece of legislation, but so far it's only on paper, it's not operational. I hope good sense prevails, and I hope the government decides to listen to what people are saying, what journalists are saying, what even political opposition in a democracy is saying, and does not operationalize this law. But of course, if it goes ahead and decides to operationalize despite all the urging by everyone in our democracy, then there will be no choice but to go to the judiciary for a lot of people. And you're right that then it becomes a long drawn process. The judiciary is not always working with the kind of alacrity that people need, but I'm still hopeful, Neelu, that when in a democracy like ours, when people do speak out, and I think this involves almost every section of society. Even when we all met with the opposition leaders, even when we try to connect with the government ministers, it was not any one group. It was really campaigns across the country. It was journalists. It was everyone who said that this is a grave threat to our democracy. Don't bring a law like this because you will cause a chilling impact and we will have no journalism to speak of. We will have nobody left who will be allowed to raise their voice against any injustice that is happening. So I'm hopeful that the government will respond it acts responsibly.
Thank you so much, Anjali, for talking to the Federal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.